Let the meltdown begin. MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network. I am Gabriel Morency. Let's do this thing. We're going to send it to Costa Rica and crunch some numbers with the best odds maker in the business, Mr. Joey Odessa. So we've got UFC 169 this Saturday in New Jersey. World Series of Fighting coming back to Canada. They were just in Vancouver this past December. They're going to be in Edmonton, Alberta this February. We're going to break it down with Steve Fader from the World Series of Fighting Canada. We've got some kick-ass videos of the week. All that and more on tonight's MMA Meltdown. MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network continues. I am Gabriel Morency. Let's send it to Costa Rica, where we're joined by the premier combat sport odds maker in the business, bar freaking none, the one and only Joey Odessa. Joey, it's always a pleasure. How you doing tonight?
Hey, my pleasure, G. What's happening?
We're doing all right, Joey. We're doing all right. You know what? Very, very busy time of the year this past Saturday with the fights, the games, boxing matches in Europe and everywhere else in between. And I tell you what, this weekend is no different. Of course, Super Bowl weekend historically, Joey. The UFC has held their card in Las Vegas this year, holding the card in New Jersey. And we've got a pretty intriguing card that we'll get to in a couple of minutes' time. Some really big numbers on this card. And you better be careful, because I'm not so sure these favorites should be laying the type of prices that they're laying. But let's just quickly look back at what happened this past Saturday night, the UFC on Fox, Joey. Josh the Punk Thompson made a lot of headlines when he said, "My camp sucked. I'm really not into this fight, and I really don't care." And then money started flowing in on Benson Henderson. And, you know, ironically enough, Joey, basically most of the people you talk to think that Josh Thompson actually won the fight. So I think this whole good camp, bad camp stuff might be a little bit overrated.
Well, you can't, the media is the media. And, believe half of what, how does it say? Believe nothing you hear, half of what you see. And I don't know how the saying goes, but the bottom line is everybody's getting fed the same thing, and that's why you saw that line go up so much. In hindsight, I thought that there was a case there for Thompson maybe winning that fight. I was a little nervous there. I needed Henderson. In the end, I pulled the trigger on him, and largely based on the media perception of what was going on there. The number was going up. I laid what was a good number. You know what I mean? I laid less than the 3-1 close or whatever it ended up closing at. And, hindsight, 100%. I mean, Henderson got the victory. Was it, close? Yeah, it was a close fight. Was I worried? Of course. You sweat them all, but you just got to become immune to them. I mean, some of those fights on the undercard, we see it all the time. I talk about taking a marble out of the jar, and the concept, people don't understand the concept of that. When you catch a good beat, you fill a jar with marbles. And it's the only jar or the only glass in your house that you really want to have and look at as half full. Because every time you take a marble out of the jar, it's a good beat. Because everybody always complains about the bad beats. Oh, my guy got robbed, this and that. You forget about the ones that go your way. They always do. They just circle them and carry on.
Well, there's a common theme of Sal D'Amato judged fights in which people feel as if though they got robbed after the fact. But one thing I've noticed, Joey, in the past couple of weeks, and you and I have spent a lot of time talking about the line moves and the fake line moves. Sometimes they're head fakes in which some big money syndicates will float a couple of bucks on a fight to move the number, to step in big, to bet the better number on a fight. It's the old horse track shenanigans. And, for people that are betting for real on these fights, and, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And I think, Joey, not the novice guy, but Joe Sixpack, that just wants to bet 20 bucks on a fight and have a couple of beers and watch the fight, he'll see line movement, and then he'll follow that line movement. But we've seen a pattern for the past couple of cards, Joey. A lot of the big line movement has been wrong. Cowboy Cerrone, they were coming in on Martins like they knew the outcome before the fight, like he was going to win the fight. Cowboy line came weighing down. Elkins, Joey, look at the huge line movement in the Elkins fight.
I bid on Elkins. I took Elkins at plus money. I thought it was a winnable fight for him. Hindsight, I lost. It wasn't the right side. It was the losing side. And it went back. The line went back and forth. These, you call head fake, pump fakes. It doesn't take a lot to move these numbers, especially when so many numbers on these screens are all the same books and everybody goes into a panic. And it doesn't take a lot from the right people to really put to have an impact on some of these prices. I mean, people don't know. I'll tell you, from boxing to MMA, if you don't tell people what to bet, they really don't know. They really don't know, because I know the time I spend in the office watching this stuff, and that's why I'm so critical of the math guys. And we go over it again. Here's another heavyweight bout that went the full 3 rounds. Everybody, before that, the trend was they all went under. I mean, there's a trend for everything. We talked about, hypothetically, just as a joke, people that were engaged, got married, and then had a baby. Benson Henderson got engaged, got married, lost the title, then he had a baby, came back and won. Now, I'm sure if we go back 100 bouts of fighters in a similar situation, we can come up with some sort of winning statistic.
What's the stat that you came up with, Joey, in which, this isn't in Fightnomics, his book, or any other fight metric stat? What did you say? From just the fighters that you knew of. And because I told you, I said, and God knows how many fighters have had problems that we don't know about. What do you say, guys, fighters that had problems with their wives, divorced, or broke up with their girlfriends were like 1 in 22?
And newborns. I mean, look at Johnny.
1 in 22.
Goes out there, has a couple kids, looks like a world beater. I mean, everybody reacts differently. How do you put a number? I mean, IQs, things like that. The math. Look, that's beyond my pay grade. All I know is that I send limos for him, because if you don't watch the fights, I mean, look at a guy like Zhang. We'll go all the way back to when they brought him over from China. We expected this guy to be something special. With the Russian fighters, I know you want to talk about last week's Al Capone there.
Well, yeah, I'm pissed off that I didn't take it, because I knew. I damn well bloody knew, and I said this, and we talked about this. Walt Harris shouldn't be minus 400 against anybody, all right? And there he is, minus 400 like he's a world beater. It's amazing, Joey. And nobody knows it better than you, but it's amazing how these markets have changed, in which you get these stiff fighters with one fight in the UFC and a freaking loss or whatever, and then they're minus 400. Like they're somebodies, like they've beaten a bunch of guys before. And
in fairness, he did look horrible in his first bout, but then you have Soa, who didn't look good either.
But Harris didn't look good. Harris didn't look good against Rosholt, so he punched him once. Big deal. He punched him once and couldn't finish him off after.
Exactly.
He had 2 terrible guys. It's like a college basketball game. If you got 2 crappy teams and one of the teams is plus 12, you're not going to lay the points. You should take the underdog.
I won't go as far as to say that they're terrible, because one skill set at wrestling, Rosholt, is tremendous. Unfortunately, he suffers from a syndrome, called he doesn't seem to have too good of a chin, or, kind of like he's a monster until he gets hit. Tyson said everybody's got to play until they get hit. How do you put that into a number? I mean, that's just a gut feeling. And people say, guys that bet off their gut lose. Look, I would rather do the research and lose on my own than pile up a bunch of stats that everybody else is looking at that's already, you would think is already incorporated into the number. Again, I preach it. It's not what you know that hurts you. It's what you don't know. And I won't watch these shows, because they will play. I tell you, some of these worst cards that I've had are when I start studying for them 3 weeks in advance. Because after you study for them and you come up with their number, they look like a concrete, like this card here looks like it's got some wrong favorites on it on the undercard. And I'm psyched. But the longer it goes and the more immediate it gets shoved down my throat, then I start looking. I mean, that Karolov that I played at the last minute, and I did play him. I played him at the very last minute, and I wasn't going out there tooting the horn that I was playing him, because he looked horrible. But we said somebody saw something in this kid, and if we look back at history, when we bet Shlemenko, and I preached Shlemenko like he was the next coming of Fedor at that weight, and going to wreck everybody. In his Bellator debut, we laid too high of a price, if you recall, and he slid by, and we said we dodged a bullet there.
Well, we saw last week, Joey. We saw last week that the underdogs were barking. Krylov won as plus 300 out of the gate. The second fight, just Sullivan, George Sullivan beats Mike Rhodes. He was an underdog. The underdogs were barking a little bit, and we'll see if the dogs continue to bark in New Jersey this Saturday night. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll take a look at the main card and the co-main event, the main event, and the bizarro worldness of why is Barao in favor of the main event over Aldo, which doesn't really make any sense at all. But whatever, MMA Meltdown continues. MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network continues, as does our conversation with the premier combat sport odds maker in the business, Joey Odessa, who joins us from Costa Rica. I am in Toronto, Ontario at the Fight Network studios. Joey, the UFC 169 pay-per-view. It's in Newark this Saturday night, Super Bowl on Sunday. It's been a lot of talk about, they're going to move the Super Bowl to Saturday. And it's funny because a couple of weeks ago, somebody asked Dana White, they said, what if they move the Super Bowl to Saturday? Will you move your event? And he said, that's a stupid question. What are you, an idiot? And now, this week, the UFC says, yeah, we're going to move our event to Sunday at the Super Bowl, which is just stupid. The Super Bowl is over at 10 o'clock anyways. But they're not moving anything. The Super Bowl is not moving, and the UFC ain't moving anything. But I find it a little bit strange that Faber versus Barao is the main event over Aldo and Lamas, Joey.
Well, you got the West Coast kid. I mean, people still
Yeah,
love
but he's
Faber.
a lower weight class. That's not the way they do it. It just pisses me off. It shouldn't. It's a little thing, but it does.
It's just, entertainment value. I guess it might upset you a little bit, but it doesn't matter to me if he fights the third fight of the night or the 12th fight of the night.
Well, why not put it on the Fight Pass then, so people have to buy Fight Pass, like they're doing with the Vanderlei Silva, Chael Sonnen. Come on. What a joke that is. Oh, they had a fight at the house. I thought everything that happens in the gym during the Ultimate Fighter is a secret. People get sued for that crap. Nothing ever gets leaked outside of what happens on the Ultimate Fighter, ever. And then this gets leaked by Dana White, coincidentally, when you got to get the TV series on Fight Pass. It's just so comically insulting.
Well,
it's insulting to the
leaked.
UFC fan.
I mean, it just gets leaked to the right people. I mean, I couldn't say with a good conscience that I didn't know who the finalists were, with ample time beforehand.
Yeah, well, don't say that. Okay, we'll move on from that conversation. But I just find
hypothetically,
I just find it comical.
However you want to say it, please.
I'm getting off track here, Joe. I'm getting worked up now. So we got the main event here. We got Aldo's a huge-ass favorite. Barao, a pretty big favorite. Overeem, once again, a pretty big favorite. And that's kind of the fight. The Lamas-Aldo fight, a lot of people are thinking Lamas can beat him. Are you one of them?
No.
Neither am I. What about Faber and Barao, which Faber's 30-1 against everybody and then 0-5 in championship fights?
But forget about Faber. Let's just look at Barao and Aldo, right? I mean, now I'm just going, kind of off the top of my head here, but he beat, and I'm going to mix these up here, but Barao, of course, he did beat Faber.
Beat Mike, beat McDonald. Beat McDonald.
Yeah, I mean, Aldo, Jung, Edgar, who's my guy, Mendez, I think Mendez could very well have been champ if not for the fence grab. Florian, if I'm not mistaken, he put Florian into retirement. I mean, even Barao. I mean, he smoked Wineland, who just came back and looked great, and people actually thought Wineland might have lost that fight just coming up. I mean, he beat the heck out of Jorgensen, who's was a really good wrestler out of California. I forget the college. It was
Jorgensen, Boise State.
Boise State, excuse me. I'm sorry, Boise State. Pickett, who's had some success. Who else is on this card? It's Chris Carrasso.
Yep.
I mean, he's no joke. We can go all the way back.
I like Carrasso. I like Carrasso this week, Joe. I'm going to pull the trigger on Carrasso. You like him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to let the cats out of the bag too early before the number dies, but yeah, I mean, there's some guys on this card that can win. There's some guys on this card that are definitely in a spot where I think I can make strong cases for a lot of these guys on this undercard winning. And I don't want to go out and tell the numbers because they're going the opposite way, and it would defeat everything I preach, smarten everybody up.
We talk about the prelims and the undercard on the radio show, MMA Meltdown Radio, Tuesday nights, Sirius XM, channel 167. But I tell you guys that every week. So speaking of underdogs, we got Frank Mir, loser of 3 straight fights. He's been knocked out in 2 of those 3 fights. Taking on Overeem, who's been dropped in his last 2 fights. And Overeem fights are just the same thing over and over. He comes out, he lays a barrage of punches on the opponent, and then he gets dropped, as you've stated in the past. Alistair Overeem has a 185-pound chin on a 255-pound body. And conversely, we got Frank Mir, who's kind of done, but, he's facing Overeem as plus money. And, I bet on Frank Mir a lot over the years. And the guy's been...
forget about the money, though. Let's just toss the money.
Yeah, no, exactly. To me, this fight's a freaking pick'em. Any one of these guys can win. And I'm leaning with Frank Mir despite the odds, Joey.
If it was in Vegas, it would be a lot closer. You got Overeem training. Look, I don't want to coach Joey. You got Overeem training over in Thailand. I don't care what anybody says. I just read an article again about the most common places to get sick. And airplanes were like number 3 right behind kid play dates and the first day of school. And that's the way it works. I mean, got Overeem coming back, and who knows what goes on over there in Thailand. I mean, he's got some great success, but, Frank Mir, he's coming off 3 losses. Overeem, I mean, let's really look back at Overeem. And I've said this. I mean, he almost got knocked out in the K1. He's been chinny. Granted, he's good. But look at his wins. And I don't want to take things away from these guys, but Brock Lesnar, we're Doom, who's back up there, Todd Duffy, who, whatever.
And you're right. You look at Mir. You look at Mir's losses, Cormier, Dos Santos. You look at the guys that he fought, and you're like, you can kind of almost give him a pass a little bit for it.
Barnett, Cormier, Dos Santos, exactly.
Yeah.
He beat Nelson to death.
Yeah.
He beat Crow Cop. So, I mean, Crow Cop's, I don't want to say he's shot, but Crow Cop is a shell of anything he was over in Japan.
All right,
he did lose to Carwin. Okay, that was Carwin's big punch, and that's where everybody got the punch power. But you got to look at it. Carwin did have, he had Lesnar in trouble in that fight, and he had me on my knees praying that Lesnar
and Mir, Joey, and Mir. I'm sorry, we got to wrap it up, unfortunately. But Mir, he just has much more skill than Overeem. He can win in many more different ways. It's that chin, man. Frank has a tendency to back up against the fence and let guys tee off on him. And if he does that, he could end up dropping once again. Unfortunately, we got to wrap it up. Joey Moro Dessa on MMA Meltdown Radio. As always a pleasure, Joey.
Hey, my pleasure, G. Let's win.
MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network continues. MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network continues. It's time for our videos of the week. We've got some great videos this week. So let's start off with Gabriel Gonzaga. Of course, Gonzaga loses this past Saturday night to a Stipe Miocic, and it's nice to be on the right side of a fight, as we were. But you got to wonder if things would have went a little bit differently and if Gonzaga didn't break his hand during the fight. And here's a video of what Gonzaga's hand looked like after the fight.
I don't think so. I'm sure it would be good for him to get a sling. When he leaves.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It looks like a skin color UFC glove on top of his hand. It's like the hand broke in proportion with the actual glove, man. That's amazing, man. His hand looks like one giant Pillsbury Doughboy biscuit. And, that's a busted hand right there. I'm no doctor, but I watched ER in a bar once. The sound was down, but I got the gist of it. All right, so I didn't watch the WWE's pay-per-view this past Sunday night, but I did see on Twitter people were enraged. I saw Mick Foley tweeting, why does the WWE hate their fans so much? I saw Jim Ross defending the pay-per-view, saying, hey, we sell this for a great price on our new network. What are you complaining about? And there were some angry people, real angry people, after the result of Batista coming back after a 3-year hiatus to win the Royal Rumble.
That's it. That's it.
Michael!
I'm never letting pay-per-view again ever!
He gets
Don't
the dog
follow
going.
me.
Michael!
He left! Batista left for 3 years and then comes back and wins the Royal Rumble! Go! Scout! Every time you laugh at me, is everything I want to break. I better not have anything with Batista on it.
How many rooms of WWE crap does this guy have, man?
You in this? Maybe not, because he's not good enough to have his own DVD, is he? Or I wasn't stupid enough to buy it. You too. Both of you.
What was that?
The Rock. Oh, Royal Rumble. Who cares about your pay-per-view? I don't care, because all you do is everything up. Bye. Bridget. This?
That's the best freaking video we've ever played. There's just so many things to recap in that. I wish we could just play it over and over. We got 48 minutes of 60 on this show, and that video is about 2 minutes. We can play that video 24 times. Now, first off, I didn't know Roy Nelson was such a big WWE fan. And I didn't know that Roy Nelson owned as much WWE memorabilia as he did. Guy's got cages. Screw you, The Rock. There's people are going to be freaking out. There's going to be a Frank Mir fan if over him. He takes steroids and he beat up. He's gone for 3 years. Evidently, people are pretty upset that Batista won the Royal Rumble, and this guy should be a star. This guy should be a star. Like, I don't know what town this guy is from, but if I was a bar owner, I would hire this guy to watch all pay-per-views in my establishment, and just have people basically be entertained by this guy. Bravo, well done. And last observation about this video is you hear the woman's voice. I'm assuming that's not a wife. Wife? No. Girlfriend? Maybe? No. I'm thinking sister or mother with this dude. And if this guy has some hot wife in that house in which he's like a freaking hoarder of WWE crap. He's like, that's an episode of hoarding. Roy Nelson, hoarders. Every room is just full of action figures, rings, and that's just awesome. That's my favorite video ever that I think we played on this show until we show you this one. And we've got some exclusive footage. We all know that the UFC is scouring the globe for the top talent. We know they're adding the 125-pound women's weight class to the fold very, very shortly. They purchased the fighters, contracts from Invicta, etc. And we got breaking news right here on MMA Meltdown, actually. You know, there's going to be a new division. This division is 40 pounds and under. It's called UFC Minis. Good grappling skills. Now check out the kid in the blue. He's a little Nate Diaz, this kid. Watch. Like late shots and an elbow. He's taunting him. I swear to God, at the end of this video, I think his father just Vaseline his back. Like, seriously, like, how old are these kids? You see the kid in the blue. He gives a late shot, cheap shot, and he goes for the elbow as well. It's a pretty decent grappling by the youngsters. And if I was a sleazy-ass agent instead of a sleazy-ass talk show host, my sleazy-ass white ass would be on a plane to Thailand and sign these kids, give them a contract, you know, $1 a week for life. All right, MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network continues. MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network continues. I am Gabriel Morency. All right, let's talk some World Series of Fighting. With World Series of Fighting Canada, Steve Fader. They just put together a card in December in Vancouver, already coming back to Canada. February 21st in Edmonton, and tickets are actually selling at a pretty brisk pace for this card. Edmonton's a great fight town. Over 70% of the tickets have already been sold for this card. A fighter that Canadian fight fans know very well, and Ryan Ford is throwing it down for the championship against Joel Powell, and a very interesting concept as the winner will be deemed the Canadian World Series of Fighting champion. And we're now joined by Steve Fader of the World Series of Fighting. Hey, Steve, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Gabe, it's about time you had me on this show. I got to tell you, I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, you know what? We've been big supporters of the World Series of Fighting. I like what you guys are doing. You got a great, great roster of fighters that keeps on growing. And what I really like as well is you're giving Canadian fight fans an opportunity to see fight cards at an affordable price with some world-class fighters. You just had the card in Vancouver, now a card coming up February 21st in Edmonton. It's pretty clear that Canada is a pretty big piece of what the World Series of Fighting is trying to do.
Yeah, I don't think it's any surprise to anybody that Canada is one of the strongest MMA markets in the world. And I mean, clearly the guys in Vegas recognize that. Canada being their first international expansion. So yeah, we're really excited to be able to bring the Canadian fans fights just like we did before with the other promotion across the country, and high quality. I really wish that I could expose all of what's going on behind the scenes as far as the TV distribution and the ins and outs of daily operations as far as WSOF Canada and the States is concerned. One thing I think, I don't think I can confirm for this upcoming February 21st event, but we've got another fight scheduled to go on the main card. And it looks as though we've got a tentative replay set for both NBC Sports as well as a fairly substantial Canadian television distribution company that I'm technically not allowed to say the name of yet. So it's exciting. We've got exciting things in the works. And you know, our ultimate goal is to be able to add the top Canadian athletes to these cards so that the whole country gets exposed to, you know, the high level of MMA that we've got here in Canada.
So you guys have, you guys are trying to do a lot right now, and you got a lot of balls in the air, and that's a good thing. And of course, the card February 21st. There's a lot of other stuff that I want to throw at you about the World Series of Fighting as well. But as far as this card is concerned, I was following you on Twitter, and I saw you tweeting and people asking about the format for the Ford Powell fight, in which, you know, the winner, Ford Powell, would be the Canadian World Series of Fighting champion.
Yeah.
And some people are having a hard time really understanding it. What do you mean? You're going to have different champions? And, you know, it seems pretty simplistic to me, and I actually like the concept here. So why don't you let people know tuning in right now, what's this all about? What's the plan?
Okay, so there's no set dates or timeline is in place right now. Imagine this. You've got, let's just use Ryan Ford. Ryan Ford is the welterweight Canadian World Series of Fighting champion, and you've got Steve Carl, who's set to fight Mark Harris in March for the welterweight championship in the States. Eventually, what the plan is to have these different country champions fight each other. So every single weight class will have a different champion in each country, so that eventually, you know, in form of a Grand Prix style tournament, let's say, these guys will fight each other to see who will hold the world title, essentially. So, I mean, you could unofficially brand it as almost like the Olympics of mixed martial arts, I guess, if you want to put that tag on it.
I think it's a great concept. You builds rivalries within the company that wouldn't already be there. The rivalries will exist with the fighters already, but not in the same way. As opposed to, I'm the real champion. I'm the real champ, and representing the country aspect as well. It makes a hell of a lot of sense with your name, the World Series of Fighting. So was this always the plan, like when it was developed with Ray and, all right, the World Series of Fighting, we're going to have champions in each country? How did this all come together? Was this been a long-term goal?
From the very first conversation that we had, this is ultimately the end destination, right? Like, this is where we saw the company going. I mean, when you look at other sports like hockey, let's use hockey as an example, like the World Juniors, you see the amount of pride that people from different countries take in backing their country as far as the sport of hockey is concerned.
Yeah.
Not taking advantage of that type of marketing in mixed martial arts, I think, is a huge mistake. I mean, the UFC has done a fantastic job marketing their brand across the world. And yeah, they do shows in different countries, but they've never actually taken the opportunity to harness that country versus country stuff, with the exception of now what they're doing with Canada versus Australia in the Ultimate Fighter, and only one time before, believe it or not, with the U.S. versus the U.K., at least that we got exposed to. I'm sure they did something. The Brazil, I don't know how the Brazil Ultimate Fighters work out, but the Ultimate Fighter, it appears to me to be the only way that they've tried to take advantage of that country versus country, and I think that that's a ball drop as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there's a ton of marketing potential behind having huge Canadian fans come down into the States to watch their Canadian champion take on the U.S. champion, right? I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there.
Steve Fader of a World Series of Fighting with us. So, Steve, you guys challenged Bellator to, let's throw our fighters together. You guys even put together a card. I thought it was an awesome card. I didn't think it was going to happen because putting MMA promoters together, you have a better chance of, solving the Israel and Palestinian conflict, I think, than getting MMA and TV executives all on the same page together. But it started a real firestorm. And then Axis TV came out and said, you know what, we'll take the World Series of Fighting on if they want to. Mark Pavlich of the MFC said, screw that. We want to take on the other Axis TV guys. And now XFC have stepped up and said, you know what, we're in. And, you can't believe everything you read on the internet, but Middle Easy's rumor mill reported that, it actually looks like this is something that might actually happen with the XFC and the World Series of Fighting. So I was a lot in that question there. So, there was no response from Bellator, right?
No. Which is, in a way, the absence of the response. Ali, the matchmaker and vice president in Las Vegas, is going to take that as him turning down the offer. I mean, you know what? If this is as close as we can get to fight promoters actually working together to try and better the sport of mixed martial arts, then I'm all for whatever's going on right now. As far as the Access TV deal was, I mean, everybody's got an opinion on challenging up. I got into a Twitter debate with a guy who said that, oh, of course it's good for the World Series of Fighting because they're challenging up when it comes to the challenge versus Bellator. In my opinion, I mean, if you any intelligent fight fan that's been following the sport for long enough that looks at that fight card, the proposed Bellator versus World Series of Fighting fight card, knows that World Series of Fighting takes at least 8 out of 10 of those fights. I mean, of course, in fighting anything can happen, but on paper it looks like it's World Series of Fighting strong, right? And as far as I'm concerned, you know, Bellator is a whole new, different hornet's nest of. Can I say shit on here?
Well, yeah, you just did. Yeah, I think you can.
You know, it's a totally different topic. As far as Mark and Access is concerned, I mean, I really think that, you know, Mark, for once, made an intelligent decision and decided to challenge the rest of the Access TV group, because I think that that's probably going to be more effective. I mean, right now, even if you pitted World Series of Fighting Canada fighters against his MFC roster, it would be a blowout. And, I mean, the fact of the matter is 70% of his weight classes don't even have fighters in them. And I don't understand how, you know, obviously he recognized that, which is why he wouldn't have come outright and said, which I would assume he was going to, because he's usually pretty, you know, upfront about stuff like that. He would have just made a straight challenge out to World Series of Fighting, but he knew better because he doesn't even have guys to represent some of the weight classes that he's got in the MFC. So I think it's a smarter idea for them to be able to operate inside the boundaries of the Access TV group there, and then, you know, I don't know, however that's going to benefit everybody in that group, right?
I think you're right in the sense that if you could get promoters to work together a bit, and it's not going to happen. It's like getting drug dealers to work together. And like, really, it's like going to the Asian guys, you know, that run the East Side, and then getting the Colombians and the Jamaicans. It doesn't happen. We all saw the movie The Warriors. Cyrus gets shot, Steve. Yeah, they shot Cyrus. Cyrus gets shot.
You're dating yourself with that movie.
I guess I am a little bit, yeah. People are like, the Warriors, the hell's this guy talking about? But I'm used to people saying, what the hell is this guy talking about? But it's really hard to bring together. But as fight fans, and I think as well, because promoters are always like, well, we don't want our guys losing, because that's going to be the bottom line. We don't want our guys losing. It's going to devalue our brand. But I think that's underestimating fight fans. Fight fans can be jerk-offs, but I think fight fans will respect the companies for putting their fighters out there.
I agree.
I don't think everyone will wake up in the morning and go, oh, you know what? Screw that company, ha-ha. They went 4-6 against those guys. Yeah. I don't think that'll happen. I think people will go, man, I want to see that happen again. With that being stated, though, you guys have been, the UFC obviously Dana hates Bjorn Rebney. That goes without saying, but it seems like Dana White basically hates 98% of the world right now, right? I mean, he's just on the warpath of hatred, it seems. But it seems to be a level of respect between the World Series of Fighting and Bellator. I see you tweeting about UFC events, hey, great fight. You tweet fighters, etc. Ray's got a good relationship, obviously, with the UFC. He's in the corner. He's in the building. There's no issue there. I mean, they won't even let Randy Couture in the building. No problem with Ray CFO. There doesn't seem to be any friction between you and the UFC. Why is that?
I don't know the exact reason. I mean, I could speculate. And, you know, it's funny that you brought this up because, you know, when we first started the relationship with the guys in the States, I noticed these things too. I noticed what you're noticing, and I noticed what everybody else is noticing. And I thought, you know what, these guys are pretty friendly. So I started asking around. And yeah, you know, there's an amicable working relationship there. You know, I can't attest to how close it is. But just the fact that Ray has the ability to be able to, you know, walk freely and corner guys and have his fighters in the show and be on the weigh-in stage, all that kind of stuff. I really truly believe that it's got a lot to do with the relationship with Ray and who he is. So, I mean, you know, it
says a hell of a lot. It says a hell of a lot. Look, Ariel covers Bellator, and they don't want him in the building anymore, right? Like, these guys take everything extremely personal, and they notice everything. So, like you said, to have Ray up on the stage and everyone going, hey, there's the guy at World Series of Fighting, clearly, you know, and I think that's a good thing because
It
while,
is good.
while I like all these challenges and all that, I don't like it because they're all going to fall through. It's not going to happen because, you know, I actually think, you know, you guys would be better off. All the companies are better off just sort of going about your own business, making your companies as strong as possible.
Oh, my man.
Giving fight fans.
To the choir. This is something I say all the time. If everybody spent as much energy on their own company as they do bitching about what everybody else is doing, then we'd be way better
Well, it's
off.
amazing. Exactly. Like, I got nothing against Showdown Joe Ferrara. I'm not going to sit here and worry about what Showdown Joe's doing on another network.
Eyebrows, bro, man. He's got to do something about those eyebrows.
Well, you know, I'm not going to go down that road, but that's just great. I shouldn't have even brought his name up. I'm in trouble. Now, right away on Twitter, Joe, you were talking about my eyebrows, man. Come on, man. That's Fader that said that.
Yeah, you can blame that one on me.
So, you know, you've been in the fight game for a while. You know, you've been a fighter. Ray's been a fighter. How much of a difference does it make? Because I got to tell you, when I talk to fighters that have signed with the World Series of Fighting, it's pretty big that they say, you know what, the guys in that company have been fighters and in the fight game, so they understand what fighters go through.
I think it's got a lot to do with that. It's got a lot to do with the personal relationships too, right? I mean, like we talked about before, the World Series of Fighting is relatively new to the game and to the business. So, you know, it's much more important for us to be able to have to nurture those personal relationships and make these guys feel like part of a family as opposed to, and I'm not trying to knock the UFC, but it has gotten to the point where it's so big that, you know, in some cases, some of these guys might maybe feel like they're more of a number than part of the family. So I know for a fact that the guys in the States put emphasis on making sure that these guys feel right at home when it comes to competing for the World Series of Fighting.
All right, Steve. So before we let you go, and of course, World Series of Fighting, February 21st in Edmonton, Alberta. Tickets are going fast for this, so scoop them up. It's going to be a quality night of fighting. Got to ask you about Paul Harris. Ray said, you know what, this guy needs some help. We're not going to sign him. And then boom, Paul Harris is in the company. And then double boom, Paul Harris gets a title shot right now. And the guy's a killer, man. The guy's lethal as hell. He's a killer. It gets a lot of press for the company. A lot of people are paying attention to this fight. You know, a potential Ben Askren-Paul Harris fight. I know you guys wanted to make something like that happen. It doesn't happen. But, you know, what do you say to the critics out there that say, how the hell can you guys give this guy a title shot in his first fight when he just tried to, you know, snap somebody's leg in half?
You know what? I mean, we've all witnessed fighters in the fight game making mistakes, right? Everybody makes mistakes, and everybody's got to have the opportunity to change. So at the end of the day, this is a sports entertainment business. We are putting on these fights to entertain the fans, and there's no denying that this guy is at the top of his weight class when it comes to mixed martial arts. So, you know what? I mean, ultimately, I'm not the one who makes the decisions on the matchmaking, but from a fan standpoint, I can't wait to see this fight. You know what I mean? Like, Paul Harris is, every time he goes into the cage, you know, these guys know exactly what he's going to do, and he still manages to go in there and do it every single time.
I'm looking forward to. That's like you said, it has that, you know, it has that violent, what's going to happen type of element to it.
People love that stuff.
Steve, thanks a lot, man. Hey, we'll definitely get you on the show again. We wish you the best of luck. I look forward. There's always been timing issues or one thing or another as to why I can't make it to a WSOF event, but I know there's an event late March in Las Vegas that potentially I'll be able to make it to. But
April, it seems like we may or may not be coming out your way too, so we might make it a lot easier for you.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up because I want to ask you that, and I forgot to get to that. You've had Vancouver, Edmonton. What about Montreal, Toronto?
Montreal is, we've had a little bit of a roadblock as far as the promoter's license is concerned. I don't speak French, and neither does my business partner, so it's been a little bit slow going.
You don't need to learn. You don't need to learn French. You need to learn the word corrupt. You learn, you go corrupt, or I won't say more, but learn how to speak. That's enough. I won't say anything else.
Yeah. So Montreal's in the works, and it's close. Ontario's closer, and with that announcement, we're signing Josh Hill, and we're going to try and match up the bantamweight title fight versus him and Curtis Brigham, hopefully in April, and hopefully out your way. So.
Nice. All right, hey, great stuff, Steve. Thanks a lot for taking the time to be with us.
Thanks, Gabe.
There's so much stuff there I wanted to get to that about. And I remember Josh Hill from the old W1 days. Remember we had Josh Hill on? He was like 1-0, 2-0 and stuff like that. And I thought that guy was going to go places, but it's amazing. People think this stuff's overnight, man. Like Hill's been ticking, toiling around, and that was years ago. And now he's getting a little bit of an opportunity. This stuff doesn't happen overnight for anybody. It really doesn't. MMA Meltdown of the Fight Network continues. Well, that wraps up our program this evening. We appreciate everybody who tuned in tonight. We wish you the best of luck with your picks this Saturday night. Check out sportsragetv.com for all my daily selections, including fight picks on a fight night. Thanks to Steve Fader, World Series of Fighting. We wish them the best of luck with their card, February the 21st. Shout out to everybody here at the Fight Network. Other than that, you're on your own. Later.